A very good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on your time zone, to the CDDF live webinar series. My name is Rosa Giuliani. I'm a medical oncologist and a CDDF board member. And I'm very pleased and honored to welcome you all to the today webinar, which will focus on ACT EU. And the title is Collaborating with Stakeholders to Define Priorities for Clinical Trials and Working Collectively to Address Them. Such a nice title and a fantastic topic. Next slide, please. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Cancer Drug Development Forum, CDDF is a non-profit organization and is really meant to be a neutral platform and a neutral hub, our hub, for discussing cancer drug development in a very broader way with all interested and involved stakeholders, and has actually the aim to hear the voice and to stimulate the discussion between academia, pharmaceutical industry, patients and patient advocates, regulators, HTA agencies, and policymakers more in general. And this is with the final aim to improve cancer treatment, access to cancer treatment, and availability for patients. Next slide, please. So some technical aspects. If you have any issues in following the webinar, listening, anything at all, please report it in the chat function, and this will be addressed by our technicians. If you have any question, and I hope that you have tons of questions, and this is meant to be a very lively webinar, please post your section in the Q&A function. I and my co-chair will address the question. I mean, we'll ask the question, we'll present the question to the speakers. And if for any reason we run out of time, rest reassured that your question will be asked and you will have your answer. And I'm very confident that you know how to follow well and visualize well the webinar. Next slide, please. And now, without further ado, I hand over the word to my co-chair, Fergus Sweeney, for introducing himself and the speakers. The floor is yours, Fergus.
Thank you, Rosa, and hello, everyone. I'm Fergus Sweeney. I'm a pharmacologist and also, like Rosa, board member of CDDF. And it's a real pleasure to welcome our two speakers today, Laura Pioppo and Mariana Lunzer, who will talk about clinical trials and the activities of ACT EU in promoting the clinical trial ecosystem in Europe. Next slide, please. So Mariana Lunzer is with the Austrian Medicines Agency. She has a medical background with experience in pharmacovigilance and clinical trial safety assessment, and is chair of the Clinical Trials Coordination Group, which brings together all of the clinical trial assessment leaders from the member states. And she's also the CITES member state product owner at the Austrian agency. And Laura Pioppo, who works at EMA, is a pharmacist with a master's degree in pharmacovigilance and professional experience at EMA in compliance and inspections. And since 2016, she's doing leading work on the development of CITES with responsibility for the CITES transparency aspects. And that's part of what she'll tell us about. And since the end of 2023 is program manager for ACT EU and the EU initiative to accelerate clinical trials. So two speakers with leadership roles in our EU clinical trial environment. So I'm very pleased to hand over. Please think of your questions, get them into the Q&A, and we'll look forward to a lively discussion. But first of all, I hand over to Lara to start the presentations. Thank you.
So good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving the opportunity to present an ACT EU update at the CDDF webinar today. I will start with the first slide, presenting you the ACT EU program with the partners. So this is a joint initiative of the European Commission, the heads of the Medicine Agency, and the EMA. The ACT-EU program has been launched in January 2022, so almost 4 years ago, at the time of the implementation of the clinical trials regulation, so building on the momentum of the implementation of the CTR with a vision to have better, faster, and smarter clinical trials in the European Union. So really with the intention to facilitate the dialogue between member states, EMA, and the European Commission, and also the stakeholders on matters related to clinical trials. As a sign of the commitment of the partners of ACT-EU, but also in recognition of the several activities that are in place at the moment in the European Union to invigorate the clinical trials environment, we have recently launched in September of this year, identified 3 overarching benefits for the EU clinical trial environment for clinical research. And 2 of these identified benefits will be measured with key performance indicators, KPIs, against identified targets. So the first overarching benefit is about increased attractiveness of the European Union. So measuring the number of authorized multinational clinical trials in the European Union in a period of time of 5 years, with intention to see 500 more clinical trials in addition to the current trend that we see of around 900 clinical trials multinational authorized every year. So we would like to see 100 more in a period of time of 5 years. Of course, this is not going to be a fixed number. We can have a fluctuation of the numbers over time, but the intention is that overall we see an increase in the number of authorized multinational clinical trials. The second identified benefits is about time and a faster access to treatment, with the intention to speed up the recruitment of patients in the first member states concerned to reach the target of 200 or less calendar days since the submission of the clinical trial application. The expected target for this is 66% of the clinical trials, so 2/3 of the clinical trials recruiting patients within or less 200 days. We see that the current trend is 50%, so we would like to move it from half of the clinical trials to 2/3. And the third identified benefit is about impactfulness, so identifying impactful clinical trials. And also for this, the initial idea was to have identified key performance indicators measured against targets, but it's a rather difficult exercise to find an individual parameter that can be used also as a sign on impactful clinical trials. So for this has been decided to have a more composite approach, considering different submetrics, which might be the number of clinical trials in a rare disease or a pediatric population, or with the use of advanced therapy, the submission of results, and so on. So all these will be available from the ACT-EU website and complementing the existing monthly reports. We will start the measurement of these KPIs from January next year. So going back to the program, in this slide, it is taken from the current structure of the ACT-EU work plan. You can see that we have macro areas on the operation of the clinical trials regulation, maximizing the impact of clinical trials with design and conduct of excellent clinical trials, underpinning activities, and of course, public health emergency. And each of these macro areas includes priority actions. In the priority action, we have colleagues from the European Commission, the EMA, and the member states. And we have, for some of them, established focus group to incorporate the feedback from the stakeholders on the topic of interest. And you will hear more about the collaboration with the stakeholders in the next few slides. So highlighting some of the deliverables of the program and the focus areas for this year that is about to conclude for 2025, I would like to mention that for the priority action on the implementation of the CTR, we have monitored actively the number of clinical trial applications submitted in cities to monitor the trend of clinical trials and also the therapeutic areas, the number of trials conducted by commercial and non-commercial sponsors, detailed information on timelines also for evaluation, and you can see the quarterly reports that are available in the ACT-EU website. We have also performed an analysis on the number of clinical trials that have been submitted to cities during the 3 years transition period. We know that the implementation became applicable in January 2022 and has become fully applicable since January 2025. So looking at the data in cities in the 3-year analysis report, we can have an overview of the number of applications that have been submitted in the system. And we have also recently made publicly available a document on the most frequently asked requests for information for part 1 and part 2 that is intended to support and help the sponsors when submitting their application to cities to provide a high quality dossier. For next year, what you can see in terms of priorities, we plan to have a sponsor FAQ, so a frequently asked questions document complementing the recently launched master handbook for sponsors. And there will be a couple of workshops already organized in the first quarter of 2026, one on contractual agreements and another one on risk-based approaches. When it comes to the support for non-commercial sponsors, this is another key activity, key priority action in the ACT-EU program. We recognize that, of course, academic sponsor, non-commercial sponsor require a different type of support compared to industry because of the different setup and the resources available. So we're really trying to fill the gap with these entities and have an open dialogue and trying to support as much as possible also when it comes to submission in CTIS. So we had 3 webinars already that have taken place. These have been organized together with our member states colleagues and the relevant national competent authorities. So one with HPRA, the other one with AGES, and the third one with the Belgian team, just finalized at the end of November. And then one meeting is planned for the French authority in January next year. We continue with the tailored technical assistance on cities functionalities and the regulatory help desk. We have established this help desk almost 1 year ago with the intention to identify the tickets raised on the use of cities by non-commercial sponsor and trying to close and address these tickets as quickly as possible. And we have produced already a 6-month report that is available on the ACT-EU website. We also have a map of the national support initiative that is kept up to date. And also we refer to other stakeholders initiatives such as ECRAN, and the RED database that has been launched, the RDR for multinational clinical trials in rare disease and so on. So looking ahead, we plan to have few webinars to support academic sponsors and continue with the webinars as currently organized. In relation to GCP, so good clinical practice modernization, of course, the new text of ICH E6R3 is now applicable in the European Union since the 23rd of July of this year. Changes have been made in the text in the previous version, of course, of the ICH on the Annex 1 and on the principles section, in order to disseminate the knowledge and communicate to the stakeholders the main changes introduced with this revision of ICH E6R3 based on fitness for purpose and the application of a risk-based approach. We have organized a webinar in February of this year. This has been followed by over 2,000 people that were connected online from 50 different countries. And you can find all the relevant material from this workshop in the event page on the ACT-EU website. What is coming next is the finalization of Annex 2, that is more focused on elements of trial design, on pragmatic clinical trials, the use also of real-world evidence and real-world data. And then there will be several change management activities with a particular focus for academic sponsors on the new principle introduced by the Annex 1, the principles, and the Annex 2 when available. In relation to methodologies, this is another priority action of ACT-EU. We have done a signposting of existing guidance documents on clinical trial methodologies produced by the different groups, the MWP, the CTCG, and this is available from the ACT-EU website. We have established a process in place for which the chairs of the CTCG, the chairs of the MWP, MWP standing for Methodology Working Party, and the HTA coordination group meet on regular basis. And this is really important for the chairs of these three groups to be aware on the finalization, for example, of their work plan, on priority areas for the groups, of course, that they are leading, and make sure that we have a continuous dialogue. And then few workshops have also taken place. And for all the workshops that we organize, usually we also published a report and the recording. So you might want to consult the ActEU website to have a look at the discussion during the Bayesian statistics, the assessors, clinical trials specific workshop that took place in July, and another one on external control. And then looking ahead, we plan to have a dedicated meeting with Emprema, so the group looking at the network of sponsors and entities conducting clinical trials in pediatric population, and another workshop on platform trials, both of them scheduled for 2026. On data analytics, I would like to emphasize the launch of the trial map that occurred in March of this year, with dedicated demo and materials available also on the event page on the ActEU website. This is a map that is consuming data from CTIS public portal, but is particularly intended to be used by healthcare professionals and patients organizations in a user-friendly format to find relevant information about clinical trials. We have recently done a release at the end of October to enable the search in all the EU official languages. The initial release of the trial map was only in English, but listening to the feedback from the stakeholders, we have done an updated version to enable the search based on the data that is available in CTIS on all the official languages. And we will continue working on new releases of the trial map as well on publication. There are a couple of publications coming on clinical trial trends based on the information that we have in the CTIS, but also looking at the data previously captured in the EU Clinical Trials Register, the database of EudraCT. And this is how the trial map looks like in Greek. Hopefully you can read it well. Maybe I can explain here better. You can see the layout was just to give you a flavor on how it might look like in a different language. The number of clinical trials right now is a little bit higher than this, is more than 10,000, but having the interface in different languages hopefully will also increase the user friendliness. And before I hand over to Marianne Lunzer to guide you through the collaboration with the stakeholders, I would like to conclude mentioning additional activities that we have in the program of ActEU where we're working on, and that will be focus areas also for next year. One is on the training needs for academia and SME, and another one is on a pilot on consolidated advice for clinical trials. Training needs for academia and SME, because we have conducted a survey at the beginning of this year to understand the critical areas where academic sponsors and small and medium enterprise consider that would be important to have additional trainings. And this survey has then been, the results of the survey have been assessed, and a report has been published over summer, identifying 3 critical areas: CTIS and the CTR, the GCP modernization, of course, is not a surprise, and the safety reporting. So we are really working on it, looking at the existing offerings and the existing trainings to do a mapping and signposting. And then there is another priority action, but you will hear more from Marianne, that is on pilots on consolidated advice in clinical trials. And this is really to have an open dialogue between sponsors and the regulators before the submission of the clinical trial application is done in CTIS. One pilot is more focused on the scientific aspect and is bringing together the SOP and the CTCG, and the other pilot is more looking at the regulatory aspect and is completely led by CTCG and is the so-called pre-CTA. Overall, we have already received 30 applications in just over 1 year since the launch of the pilot. And with this, I will stop here, and I will give the floor to my colleague, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, and good afternoon as well from my side. I would like to jump directly into more details in relation to the two advice pilots. These are two offerings that have been very well received, as Laura said, but mainly by commercial sponsors. So this is why I would like to provide a bit more details on both offers, as they are very valuable also for non-commercial sponsors. And this is a good occasion to introduce you to more details in relation to them. So let's start with the scientific advice from Scientific Advice Working Party, CTCG. This is running very similar as the normal Scientific Advice Working Party offer. It also entails the same fees, which has the positive news for you that for non-commercial sponsors it is free of charge. For small and medium enterprise, there is a fee reduction of 90%, and if the application is in relation to an orphan disease, it is again free of charge. So you will receive the normal standards of a Scientific Advice Working Party advice, plus the additional view from clinical trials assessors, both at the same time. So you receive information on the suitability of your trial design to support marketing authorization, but at the same time you would also receive information in relation to the clinical trial application itself. It has again the standard procedure of the Scientific Advice Working Party advice in relation to timelines. And as usual, you will have to use the IRIS platform, and you will have to justify why the joint advice of a SOP CTCG is sought. And then the second advice pilot is the pre-CTA advice. This is a CTCG only advice, which has been requested strongly from the stakeholders when the clinical trial regulation came into force. And together with our stakeholders, we developed this offer. One of the requests was to have it in a very short period of time. We were able to meet this request by offering a 30-day procedure. As it is rather limited advice, it's only in relation to regulatory questions or technical questions. Therefore, the preparation time and the time to give the advice is not as extensive as it was for a scientific advice, and therefore we raise a fee only for the lead member state who is responsible to give that advice. If at all, if this member state derogates fees for academics, then again, it is free of charge for academic applicants. The concept of this trial is that you send over your questions. It can be a few questions in relation to a subset of topics. So the typical request is in relation to complex trials and how to go forward in CTIS. But we've also received a question already in relation to a pediatric trial. So those are the topics that have been brought forward so far. And then after the member state that takes the lead on the procedure has formed an opinion, the procedure will be brought forward to the other colleagues from CTCG and also from assessment teams across the member states to align on the position. And then once this is done, you receive the final outcome of this advice. And how to apply for this pilot, we are using the same entry point as the scientific advice, as the SNSA colleagues. So this is the SNSA at Belgium address that you see on the slide here. So now I I'm happy to present on objectives of the multi-stakeholder platform, and this is, I mentioned it already in relation to the advice pilots, but also concerning many other topics. We are really grateful for input from the stakeholder side. We are happy to take on board your comments. You can always bring topics forward to the multi-stakeholder platform meetings via the different organizations, or at the annual meetings also directly if you want to raise a question there. But also we take the liberty to reach out to our stakeholders in case we think we should better consult with yourselves before we publish, for example, new guidance documents, or where we think we don't have the full picture if we just discuss amongst ourselves. So then how the multi-stakeholder platform came into being. The first inaugural meeting of the multi-stakeholder platform advisory group with its permanent representatives took place in March 24. And then with together with the ad hoc representatives, an info session took place in April. And in December 24, the first annual meeting, followed by 3 quarterly multi-stakeholder platform advisory group meetings. And then end of October 25 this year, we had our second multi-stakeholder platform advisory group annual meeting. And this is either a small or a larger group where we are seeking interaction with our stakeholders. And then to go into more detail on the activities, we've had already 3 focus groups where you have been consulted, or where we are still consulting with you. The first one has been the redesign of the CTIS training material. This have been a few meetings with a smaller group of members who volunteered for this activity, followed by a written exchange. And now in the meantime, the sponsor handbook has been published and has already been updated, and will be updated again in a few weeks to reflect changes that have been made in CTIS and which have consequences in the training material that is publicly available. The good thing about the CTIS training material now is that everything is in the single huge document, which might look a bit intimidating at the first glance, but the good thing is you can search using the search functionality or the good index that is available, and you don't have to scroll across different documents. So please don't be afraid when you open it. It is a very useful document. Also in the past lies a consultation process in relation to auxiliary medicinal products guidance document that has been published in the meantime on Udralex Volume 10. The request from the stakeholders was to receive more clarity in relation to specific aspects of an already published document, and we've been able to do this, and in the meantime, as I said, it has been published again. What is ongoing at the moment is the active interaction in relation to risk proportionate approaches, where also non-commercial sponsors are really well represented, and we are presenting the progress of an updated recommendation paper, and in the different sessions, the different chapters are discussed with the stakeholders that volunteered again for this focus group. So other activities that have been brought forward either by you or have been asked by us to receive more input. One activity is in relation to RFIs. There has been a lot of complaint about the multitude of questions that were raised, and partially also the type of questions. So we invited our stakeholders to give us examples of RFIs that have been perceived as problematic from their end. We are using those for training purposes in something that has been presented repeatedly, but perhaps I need to repeat it once more. We are having weekly assessors roundtables where all assessors can attend a 2 hours meeting on a voluntary basis, but we are happy that many are coming. Usually we have an attendance of more than 50, if not 100 people roughly, who come together to discuss cases. And here we are using the problematic RFIs that have been raised to introduce it to them and trigger discussions. And in the other direction, we have reached out to the assessors from national competent authorities and ethics committees to let us know which questions they think they have to repeatedly raise to help the sponsors to better prepare their submission package. Then the sponsors took the liberty to bring a few topics forward to us, in this case more to the Commission, the proposals they wanted to make for the Biotech Act. Amongst others, it was reduced timelines. We've taken this up also on member state side and had our own discussions, and probably we found a good solution, viable solution also for the ethics committees to come up with accelerated assessments. But there you will know the details only when the Biotech Act will be published on the 16th of December. And then on the new targets, you've heard already the details from Laura. And then we also have heard already from Laura the activities in relation to training needs and the update on ICH revision 3. And I would really like to focus on the additional topics that have been discussed within the margins of the multi-stakeholder platform meetings or directly at the meetings. We've repeatedly presented to the advisory group the patient involvement project that has been initiated by CTCG. We will soon have the first complete draft available, which is now a position paper to be expected, and this will also be published rather soon. We have had interactions on public health emergencies and on cross-border trials, and the same on innovative designs and the respective activities. So here, just a picture to let you know how many people attended in the last annual multi-stakeholder platform annual meeting. We were 66 people on site, but much more people attended online, and it was also broadcasted, so people can still view the content. We've had a very interesting keynote speech on artificial intelligence innovation, and overall, this meeting has been very future-oriented and was a very successful and interesting meeting with all stakeholders giving very clear views, patients, ethics committees, members, and innovation in different perspectives. So the main takeaways from the second part of this presentation, we will have to make sure that we keep up with the innovation that hits us, so to say. We need to make sure that the legislative frameworks is up to standard to embrace innovation. We need to make sure, and this is really coming from the meeting itself, that AI is ethically trained and validated by humans, My final message for this presentation is that we will make sure that the ACT-EU Work Plan 2026 and 2027 reflects the stakeholder meetings, stakeholder expectations as it did in the past. So we are making sure that the multi-stakeholder platform keeps being embedded, is giving us sufficient input to deliver the right program, and we are ensuring strong patient and healthcare professional voices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to both of you, Laura and Marianne. Excellent presentations and really a lot to digest, but I think a real reflection of the really big steps forward that ACT-EU is taking since its inception in spring of last year, and really building a multi-stakeholder discussion. I was at the annual meeting myself, and it's really all segments are present: patients, regulators, sponsors, academia, ethics. So excellent work. We have a number of questions in the chat, so I'll go straight to those. The first one is a little bit for CDDF, so I'll answer quickly. It's from Gada Zakut about steps CDDF is taking to tackle underrepresentation. So CDDF is a multi-stakeholder group, but stakeholder platform separate from the regulators as such. We have a project on diversity and inclusion in oncology trials, which is ongoing. You can find information on our website. So please look there, follow. We hope to publish next year, and there'll be a session in our annual meeting. But it gives me a chance to ask Marianne quickly on one of your last slides. You spoke about the patient interaction and how CTCG as an initiative jointly with patients. Maybe you could just say a few words about how that's going and how that might address issues such as this to expand patient input into clinical trials. Marianne.
Thank you very much, Fergus. On the patient involvement, we really intend to strike the balance between strongly recommending early involvement of patients in the clinical trial protocol development mainly, while we've also heard very clearly that we should not come up with mandating it or very strict requirements. So it should be clear to the sponsor to involve patients early on where it makes sense, and describe this clearly in a section of the protocol. And then we will have a new part in our assessment report template where we will evaluate the patient involvement if it has been described, if it is appropriate according to our perception. And this is more or less the first step that we are doing in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And just to emphasize, patients are very much involved in the multi-stakeholder platform also. So moving on to the next question from Siard Sagar, which reflects back to your presentation, Marianne, again. What are the plans to extend the 2 successful scientific advice pilots in 2026 and beyond? So this is the joint advice and pre-CTA advice.
Thank you for the question, Siad. We are foreseeing a prolongation at this point in time because we still do not have the feedback from the sponsors after they have submitted their applications in consequence of having received the advice. So we are really interested in understanding whether the positive feedback that we have received after the advice itself still holds true after the clinical trial application has come in. If from your side the questions have been sufficiently broad to not to have any blind spot in the application later on, if the assessors are still of the opinion that the advice given still stands in the light of the full dossier submitted, questions like this will be raised to both the applicants and the assessors in the retrospect after the clinical trial application has come in. And this is a sort of data that we still do not hold, and therefore we do not take the next step yet to go to a permanent offer. So we will still uphold these pilot advice offers. And we are also inviting sponsors that have already submitted applications via these offers to go ahead and submit second or third applications. It's not restricted to those sponsors who have not yet made use of the offer, while we would really like to invite sponsors to select a broader range of member states when they are submitting applications. So not systematically the same member state would be a good compromise for us also to broaden the experience on member state side. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And perhaps now to Laura. The ACT-EU program and its actions have been very much welcomed by the multi-stakeholders in the platform, and it's great to hear about the focus groups also, which is engaging stakeholders on specific topics. Could you give us some highlights for the ACT-EU program, its priorities and actions in 26 and 27? And I know some of these are linked to the Biotech Act, which I think comes out tomorrow, hopefully, and also EU for Health work program. Laura.
Thank you very much, Fergus. Indeed, great excitement tomorrow for hopefully to see the finalized text of the Biotech Act. But of course, this will have an impact and influencing also some of the priorities that we are considering for the revision of the work plan for ACT-EU for 26 and 27. And at the same time, there is this EU for Health work program with two joint actions, one on capacity building for assessors and inspectors, and another one on support for non-commercial sponsor, which clearly might have some synergies because we would like to avoid overlap, but rather building on synergies with activities that we have for ACT-EU. So differently from what has been done in the past, where we try to finalize the revised work plan by the end of the year, in this case, we will have to wait more for February. Realistically, it will be February more next year for the final endorsed version of the work plan for 26 and 27. Topics that we are considering are, in addition to patients' involvement that Marianne was just mentioning before, to have something reflected also in the work plan, also listening to the feedback raised during the annual meeting. Artificial intelligence, which at the moment is also not reflected in the work plan, but we know that this is broadly then used on the needs for regulators, the use of AI that the sponsors are doing when designing their clinical trials or for recruitment purposes. So having really an open dialogue between regulators and sponsors on the use of AI. And then data analytics. I think there is a great interest on the analysis of data from CTIS, and we have two publications that will be upcoming basically in the next couple of months. We aim to publish an analysis of the trend of clinical trials in the EU. If you want our reflection following the publication also of the FPR report last year, to see a comparison on the trend of clinical trials at the time of the directive versus the regulation, but also listening to the stakeholders on their needs. So when the stakeholders have presented their use cases in a workshop that took place 18 months ago, to really see what we can do to favor a better access to data, clinical trials data. So I think these are just some of the areas that we are considering. So AI, patients' involvement, of looking at Biotech Act and joint actions, data analytics, and of course the implementation also of ICH 6 and the finalization of Annex 2 with all the change management activities that will follow and the support for academia and non-commercial sponsors. So yeah, still an exciting time and busy month ahead, I think. For complementing to what Marianne was saying just on the consolidated pilots, I wanted to mention now that we refer to the work plan, that if you look at the current version of the work plan, it seems that the pilots basically were due to end in 2025. But as Marianne has illustrated, we are still considering when we will be when and if we will be ready to move to the permanent offering. So at least until the first quarter of 2026, the two pilots will be in place. It's just not reflected in the work plan and will be in the updated version. But also applicants that have made use of these pilots in the past, as Marianne was saying, are encouraged to reapply. And yeah, we're happy to see so much positive feedback. Thank you.
Good.
No, sorry, Rosa, go ahead, please.
No, it's okay. I'm very curious to have some your feedback, both from Laura and Marianne, whoever wants to jump in, about a very pragmatic question, which I think is truly relevant and is in our mind. So it's from Martina Hoet, and she's asking, for ongoing trials with an IVD component, what can be done to improve the situation of parallel and partially redundant, no offense there, evaluation of the CTA and IVD documentation to avoid divergent and contradictory feedback and to reduce the overall timelines, especially for the IVD assessment? Any plans for simplification on harmonization to support ongoing trials? I think this is really relevant. Any activity in that direction?
Yeah, I can
Marianne,
probably
that's for
start
you
off.
with Combine.
Yeah, we have, you're probably aware that there is the Combine project, which is where the information is hosted at the Commission homepage, and where the Commission brings together clinical trial related specialists, plus also their different working groups in relation to the assessment on IVDR and MDR matters. And as part of this initiative, we have several projects ongoing for assessments. And here we have to differentiate between cross-functional or cross-legislative projects and mono-legislative projects, so to say. So as part of the Combine initiative, there is also a coordinated assessment of the individual legislative frameworks, IVDR and MDR, which is already an improvement in the sense that it is a multi-member state view on the dossier in relation to one legislative framework. But on top of this, we also have a separate pilot for an all-in-one procedure where CTR and IVDR at the moment are evaluated together. And sponsors have been invited before the end of before the summer to submit after summer a few trial applications where also the IVDR aspect is covered in the same application and where the assessment is coordinated across the disciplines, and where also the national competent authorities or whoever is responsible for the assessment, but also the ethics committee assessment is built into this all-in-one process. And this is running according to clinical trial regulation timelines, and therefore entails a substantial acceleration of the procedure by sticking to the CTR timelines. And the submission is to CTIS only, so there is a single submission, and then later on to fulfill the national requirements, a formal second submission is done, but the assessment itself takes place within CTIS framework, and also the questions are raised there. The downside for some of the sponsors is that at the moment we were only inviting a concept of single sponsor, so that the same sponsor should be responsible for the CTR aspects and the IVDR aspects. But we are entering a second phase of this pilot where we are also inviting a collaboration of sponsors, where the CTR aspect can be covered by one company and the IVDR aspect can be covered by another company. But we are really requesting those two companies to collaborate, to be able to answer the questions at the same time, not to be too restrictive in what kind of information can be shared across the two organizations, to really make it a single process instead of two parallel activities that run independently from each other, exactly to achieve what has been part of the question, this single dossier concept that is our final goal in relation to such an application. Thank you.
Thank you. So please, people, put questions in the chat. But just in the meantime, Laura has mentioned in her presentation the push to increase multinational trials and the aim with the KPIs to go from, I think, approximately 900 this year to increase that to about 1,400 over the next 5 years, which will be really good. Multinational trials are one of the key objectives of the regulation. And I've seen recently, Marianne, the HMA published something about a new initiative, Fast EU. Could you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do so. I hope this will really substantially increase the attractiveness of Europe in the global comparison and competition. We are trying to bridge the time until the Biotech Act comes into force by non-legislative efforts to accelerate the assessment timelines. This has been repeatedly brought forward. We have reflected on how to approach this best. I think we have a rather good idea on how to accommodate this request by performing validation and assessment at the same time. So we assuming that you will always have a protocol, an IB, and an IMP related document, appropriate IMP related documentation, and a few Part 2 documents that are really core to a submission, will always be there, and based on this initial package, assessment can already start, and certain additional documentation in relation to compliance checks or whatever can also be requested at a later point in time and will not be so time consuming to check them. And therefore, we really strongly believe that this concept will work well. And we are intending to initiate or open the door for first submissions towards the end of January, beginning of February. And we are aiming for, let's say, roughly 20 procedures until the joint action that Laura has already referred to becomes active. So this is the very first pre-pilot, we wanted to name it in order to make sure that all our assumptions are correct and that we are well informed when opening up for more applications to come once the joint action will be initiated in November, December this year. Thank you.
That's great. Also.
Yeah, no, I think, Marianne, you're still on the spot because basically we liked your answer about the IVD and CTA, but we want more explanation. Always for Martina. So the question is, thanks for the explanation. However, I understood these pilots are only for the new CTAs. Is that correct? So it seems that there are no plans to help with what is already ongoing. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Martina, you're fully right. This has been only for clinical trial applications, but we are foreseeing several phases of this all-in-one procedure. And as part of our discussions, we are also open to discuss to go ahead with substantial modifications. But we need to understand, I mean, part of the complexity is that substantial modifications could uniquely be in relation to a specific part, so we might again have to restrict it to situations where both aspects are covered by the substantial modification. But we are discussing to open up for substantial modifications, yes, at a later point in time.
And sorry, girls, for grilling you, but this is the point of the webinar. So from Marta Moretti, a question about contractual arrangements that have been mentioned as upcoming documents prepared by EMA. What are they for?
Thank you, Ross. I guess the EMA is mentioned, so I'll take this also because it was in my slide.
Okay.
Yes, rather than a document, I think we will start with a webinar, with a workshop that is planned for the beginning of next year, because we are aware that one of the main issues also in the context of speeding up the recruitment of patients at the site is to facilitate any work that can be done when it comes to the contract between the sponsor and the site. So there will be also listening to the stakeholders an event, making use of the multi-stakeholder platform advisory group and the experience that we have from the member states. Some of the member states are using more standardized and template format to share experience, and then considering also the work that is being done by ECRAN more at the European level. So will be maybe the first one of a series of discussion. Is just a workshop that will be organized with more concrete deliverables in 2026. So every time that we organize a workshop with ACTU, we tend to publish then the recording and the report. So more information will be available in our website. But it's not a document per se, it's more an event. Thank you.
That's very clear. I found very clear.
Thank you. So I think we're running to the end of our time slot, but it's been really full of information, and thank you very, very much to Mariana Lunza and Laura Pioppo. Excellent presentations, but also really clear and insightful answers to the questions. A lot coming up, but key messages I've heard are listening to stakeholders, the multi-stakeholder platform, the focus groups are really great initiatives. And also the initiatives on multinational trials and resolving RFI, common RFI issues are all going to really help to promote the EU as a great place to run clinical trials. So thank you all. Thank you to all our audience, and hand over to Rosa, please, for a few last words.
Oh, I want to also thank on my side Laura and Marianne, because I had such fun, and I want to continue to discuss forever, but we cannot, unfortunately. Thank you very much. So now, so the discussion, this is only the start of the discussion. There are many events that CDDF is organizing to bring forward the discussion, and the first, this is just a reminder of the main events. So first of all, the annual conference, which will be in February in Belgium, in Ghent, and it will be about clinical research in a changing global environment. How timely, I would say. And then the discussion will continue in March, always in Belgium, this time in Brussels, about the challenges in the landscape of a global development strategy, as if, you know, local would not be enough problem. Now let's go global. I think that this is a very pertinent discussion, and of course also always thinking of patient access. So two very interesting conference and workshop. Next slide. And then in October, we would like to have discussion about the health technology assessment in cancer drug development, following, of course, all the development in the field in Europe. So this will be, I think, a very interesting discussion again, and again in Brussels in October. This workshop. So please save the date for it. Next slide. And I mean, we are very happy. I'm personally very happy about these webinars, but of course there is always room for improvement. So I really would like to ask your help for providing feedback by filling the survey form. Here you have the QR code. And with that, I would like to thank once again my co-chair, Sweeney, Laura and Marianne, and you all for the participation. Thank you, everybody, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.